And the Oscar goes to Al Pacino.
At 85, Al Pacino isn't just a living legend. He's a man who has walked through fire, stared down mortality, and somehow come out the other side with more fight in him than ever. From The Godfather to near-death battles, his story has always been larger than life. But what's happening to him right now is something no Hollywood script could capture. He's facing health scares, personal reinvention, and even spiritual revelations that shocked fans worldwide, and yet he refuses to slow down. What really happened to Pacino at 85 will leave you emotional, and maybe even in tears. Long before the awards, the scandals, or the near-death battles, Al Pacino was just a kid from East Harlem, with a voice too loud for his neighborhood, and a dream too big for his family to understand. He grew up poor, raised by a single mother after his father walked out. The streets around him were unforgiving, and for a time Pacino wasn't sure he'd escape them at all. Friends slipped into crime, some never made it out alive, but Pacino had something that set him apart, an obsession with performance. He started with tiny stage productions, often broke, sometimes homeless, crashing on couches just to keep chasing acting classes. There were nights he skipped meals to pay for lessons, days when casting directors told him flat out he wasn't leading man material. Too short, too strange, not handsome enough. But Pacino kept grinding, fueled by something deeper than ambition. He carried the kind of hunger only hardship can carve into someone. That hunger eventually landed him on Broadway, where his raw, explosive energy made people take notice. By the late 1960s, he was circling the edges of Hollywood. Then came the call that changed everything. Francis Ford Coppola wanted him for The Godfather. At the time, studio executives hated the idea. They thought Pacino was too unknown, too risky. But Coppola fought tooth and nail to keep him. And when audiences finally saw him transform into Michael Corleone, history was made. Overnight, Pacino wasn't just an actor. He was a cultural force. The Godfather wasn't just a movie. It was a statement, and Pacino's performance became the soul of it. By his early 30s, the kid from East Harlem was no longer invisible. He was a rising star who had cracked the impossible code of Hollywood. But with that rise came pressure. Success became a trap disguised as triumph, and Pacino was about to find out that the higher you climb, the more dangerous the fall can be. And before we dive deeper into Pacino's most shocking moments, make sure you're subscribed. We've got more stories about the legends of Hollywood you don't want to miss. By the 1970s, Al Pacino was no longer clawing his way into the spotlight. He was the spotlight. The Godfather made him a household name, but it was only the beginning. Within a few short years, he delivered a string of performances that critics still rank among the greatest in cinema history. Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, and Justice for All. Each role felt like lightning bottled up in human form. Pacino wasn't just acting. He was living his characters, pouring every ounce of fire from his own scars and struggles into the roles. People could feel it. That authenticity made audiences lean closer, as if they weren't watching a movie at all, but witnessing someone unravel in real time. And then came Scarface in 1983. Critics didn't know what to do with it at first. Many dismissed it as too violent, too outrageous. But fans, they turned it into a cultural phenomenon. Tony Montana became an icon of excess, ambition, and self-destruction, and Pacino's snarling intensity burned into the fabric of pop culture forever. Even today, Say Hello to My Little Friend echoes across generations who weren't even born when the movie premiered. The awards followed. Oscars, Golden Globes, Emmys. Pacino had conquered every level of Hollywood recognition, but fame came with a cost. The pressure to constantly outdo himself, the relentless demand for perfection, and the brutal glare of public scrutiny started to weigh him down. Every success only set the bar higher, and the world expected him never to stumble. Behind the red carpets and flashing cameras, Pacino began feeling the cracks. His relationships grew complicated, his private life became gossip fuel, and whispers of personal struggles started surfacing. Fame gave him everything he thought he wanted, but it also left him restless, exhausted, and searching for something he couldn't quite name. For a while it looked like Pacino was untouchable, a man whose career would only climb higher. But life doesn't let anyone stay at the peak forever, and when the fall came for Al Pacino, it came in ways that nearly broke him. The climb to the top made Pacino untouchable in Hollywood's eyes, but behind closed doors, the cracks in his world were widening. Fame had delivered power, recognition, and fortune, but it also dragged him into battles most fans never saw. Pacino began leaning on alcohol in the 1970s, a quiet escape from the crushing weight of celebrity. The same intensity that made him magnetic on screen also haunted him off-screen, and those demons didn't let go easily. By the early 80s, he was already fighting to keep himself afloat. He eventually stepped away from alcohol, but the struggle never really ended. That fight became even more terrifying decades later, when life threw Pacino a challenge that had nothing to do with critics, scripts, or box office numbers. In 2020, during the height of the global pandemic, Pacino's life nearly ended. He contracted the virus, and according to insiders, his heart actually stopped. For a few terrifying moments, Al Pacino, the man who had played gangsters, cops, lovers, and kings, was gone. The scare jolted him into a new reality. He survived, but he was never quite the same after that. Friends say the experience left him deeply reflective, shaken, and far more spiritual than before. Pacino himself admitted that the near-death moment changed how he sees every single day. The press framed it as just another health scare for an aging actor, but to Pacino, it was a rebirth. He began talking more openly about mortality, about the fragility of success, and about what it means to still be alive when so many others aren't. The man who once seemed indestructible had been forced to face the one thing even he couldn't outact, his own humanity. And as if that wasn't enough, aging itself brought new waves of public scrutiny. At 83, Pacino stunned the world by becoming a father again, welcoming his son Roman with girlfriend Noor Alfallah. Headlines called him the oldest new dad in Hollywood. Some mocked him, others praised him, but Pacino brushed it off. For him, it wasn't about image, it was about life. He said Roman gave him fresh energy, another reason to fight for each day he had left. Still, the whispers never stopped. Could Pacino really keep up with Hollywood? Was he too old for the screen? Should he finally retire? Every public appearance was dissected. His walk, his voice, his health. Fans worried, tabloids speculated. And suddenly the question wasn't whether Pacino could keep performing, but whether he could keep living. Yet Pacino has never been the type to bow out quietly. Just when everyone thought the curtain was falling, he found a way to shock the world once again. For all of Pacino's brilliance on screen, his private life has often been as dramatic as any script he's ever performed. He never married, yet his name has been tied to countless romances over the decades, some inspiring admiration, others igniting scandal. From Diane Keaton in the Godfather years, to later relationships with Beverly D'Angelo and Lucilla Pollock, Pacino's love life has always fascinated fans. But in recent years, it's the headlines about his younger partners that have raised eyebrows. In 2023, the news broke that Pacino, then 83, was expecting a child with 29-year-old producer Noor Alfallah. The revelation sent shockwaves across Hollywood. Some called it inspiring, proof of his vitality. Others called it unsettling, pointing out the massive age gap. When baby Roman arrived that summer, Pacino found himself once again the subject of public debate, praised by some for embracing late-life fatherhood, criticized by others for refusing to slow down. But the scrutiny didn't end there. In 2025, while filming in Rome, cameras caught Pacino at dinner, receiving a playful kiss on the cheek from Italian journalist Caterina di Terlizzi. The photograph exploded online, sparking rumors of yet another fling. Paparazzi headlines painted him as both a hopeless romantic and a man unable to leave behind his old habits. Pacino, as usual, brushed it off with a grin. For him, it was just another moment in a long life filled with human connections, complicated, imperfect, but real. Critics have also zeroed in on Pacino's eccentricities. He's been spotted carrying a Shrek phone case, an odd detail for a man often portrayed as brooding and intense. To some, it's proof that he doesn't take himself as seriously as the tabloids claim. To others, it's just another reminder that Pacino has always played by his own rules, no matter how strange they seem from the outside. Through it all, Pacino's controversies have done little to dim his shine. If anything, they've kept his name alive in an industry quick to forget its icons. But behind the headlines and gossip, one truth remains. Every storm in his personal life only adds more weight to the question of his legacy. And what came next would silence even the loudest critics. By the time Al Pacino turned 85, most of his peers had long since stepped out of the spotlight. But Pacino, he was busier than ever, working, reinventing, and surprising everyone who thought his story had already been written. In June 2025, Pacino did something no Hollywood star had ever done before. He met Pope Leo XIV at the Vatican. The meeting wasn't just ceremonial, Pacino presented the Pope with a model Maserati as part of his upcoming film, Maserati the Brothers. To many, the sight of Michael Corleone standing before the leader of the Catholic Church felt surreal. Here was a man who once embodied corruption and crime on screen, now embraced in a moment of spiritual symbolism. It wasn't just a photo op. It was Pacino rewriting his narrative, one that merged art, faith, and legacy in ways nobody expected. At the same time, Pacino refused to stop making films. In Maserati the Brothers, set for release in late 2025, he stars alongside Anthony Hopkins, Jessica Alba, and Andy Garcia, proof that even at 85, directors still see him as a powerhouse. Just a year earlier, he appeared in Modi, 3 Days on the Wing of Madness, and in 2024, he stepped onto the Oscar stage to present Best Picture. While some actors fade into nostalgia, Pacino keeps shaping the present. Yet his reinvention isn't just about career moves, it's about the man himself. After surviving his near-death battle with COVID in 2020, Pacino became more reflective, more spiritual, more open about the fragility of life. Friends say he speaks about mortality with calm acceptance now, even gratitude. He doesn't see survival as luck. He sees it as a second chance, one he refuses to waste. Becoming a father again in his 80s only deepened that perspective. Roman, the son who arrived in 2023, isn't just a late-life surprise. For Pacino, he's a daily reminder that life continues to give, even when the world expects you to fade. Instead of slowing down, Pacino insists on showing up for his craft, for his family, and for the legacy he wants to leave behind. And the truth is, Pacino's legacy is already secure. He's an Oscar winner, a cultural icon, and one of the last living giants of a Hollywood era that can never be replicated. But at 85, what makes his story so emotional isn't the trophies or the films, it's the fact that he's still here, still fighting, still giving the world pieces of himself. Al Pacino's story isn't ending, it's evolving. And for fans who have walked with him through decades of brilliance, scandal, and survival, watching him now feels less like saying goodbye and more like witnessing a miracle. Pacino's journey has never been simple. From a hungry kid in East Harlem to the face of The Godfather, from Hollywood's brightest star to a man staring down his own mortality, his story is one of constant transformation. He's risen higher than most could ever dream, stumbled through shadows that almost consumed him, and yet somehow always found a way back. At 85, Pacino stands not as the flawless icon fans once imagined, but as something far more powerful, human, a man who has loved recklessly, failed openly, and survived against odds that would have silenced anyone else. A man who nearly left this world in 2020, only to return with a renewed sense of faith, fatherhood, and gratitude. Watching him now is different. Every laugh, every public appearance, every quiet moment with his son Roman carries the weight of a life fully lived. He's no longer chasing approval, awards, or fame. He's chasing meaning, and that might be the most remarkable act of all. When people ask, what happened to Al Pacino at 85? The answer isn't tragedy, it's a reminder that even legends bleed, heal, stumble, and rise again. His story isn't over, and maybe that's why it brings tears to our eyes. Pacino's journey proves legends never fade. If you want to keep exploring the untold stories of old Hollywood, subscribe now, you won't believe what's coming next.